Greg, you're
Yeah.
early. What are
Hey.
you doing? You're
So
so early.
will you be able to show the excerpt, right? Yeah, oh, you have it. Okay.
Yeah, I broke them apart,
All right.
per slide. So as we're gonna get to a certain excerpt, we'll just read it, like it's. But what I want you to do is do the Plutarch first. That's why I wanted to meet yesterday, but it's all right. You didn't want to meet with me.
No, I mean,
Listen,
yeah.
it's always good to do a one before, just to make sure. And then, so you're gonna do Plutarch, then you're gonna do talk a little bit about Pericles, a couple of seconds, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
and then dive into the text. Okay,
Okay.
if you don't mind.
Sure, sure.
And
Yeah.
I also want you to mention ostracism because it's very, apparent throughout the text, and people may have missed it. A lot of people are going to be today who didn't listen to your lecture.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. We'll talk about that. Do you say ostracism or ostracism? I don't know.
Ostracism.
I don't really. I'm not sure. I thought it was. Yeah.
I can barely hear you, bro. I'm getting you a new headphone.
Really?
Damn,
You
it's so.
cannot hear me?
I don't know. Maybe it's me. Maybe I'm.
I used to.
Now it's good. Now it's good. Now it's good.
It's good. So it was you,
That's good.
right?
No, it was you.
But it was me. What was?
I don't know. Maybe it was me.
Okay.
Maybe it was us.
Okay. All right. All right. Okay. So yeah, it'll be an experiment. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah,
And,
I mean, it's gonna be probably me and you reading it mostly. I'll tell you, people.
I'm gonna ask a few people, who wants to read it. Maybe some people will read it.
It's just a lot to read, and also the text you sent me wasn't the best either. It has like it's hard to read, like deme colargus. Like there's a lot of things here. Like if you haven't read it, famous, but then the letters mix in together. The one you sent me, the text, the script wasn't really good.
But this is not a very good script either. I mean,
No, I just copied right off yours.
yeah. Well, maybe we should have changed the font. Yeah, maybe the font is not the best. Okay. Yeah.
It was horrible. I can't read anything.
Yeah.
This
Can
is
you
good.
change the? Can you? Yeah, that's that. But
No, I cannot because I copied as a
because
picture.
the one that I sent you is the same everywhere.
No, it was not. There was, so it would be hard to read. It would be very hard to read. That's why I wanted to do a dry run yesterday, just so that we can change the font. I don't know if I can change the font. Thing is, I'm not loading. I mean, it is
all
what
right.
it is.
Leave it like that.
Yeah.
Hello, gentlemen.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Are you actually running this on your desktop? The PowerPoint?
Yes.
So you should be able to change the font.
No, I copied as a picture. I can't change the font.
Oh, you copied.
It's okay.
Ah,
It's okay.
yeah,
We'll
you're
weather
done.
it. We'll weather it. By the way, Paul, is this? Do you say ostracism or ostracism?
Ostracism in English.
Ostracism. Okay. All right.
Yeah, English tends to make all of the C's
Right.
like that soft, even though the Greeks make them hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I know because a lot of the terms I still remember in Russian, so I
Yes.
keep confusing. And the Russian is definitely closer to Greek.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So.
Well, and I used to have a bunch of Greek friends, so I know how they pronounce these names. And I think the modern Greek is different from the ancient Greek. So for example, Alcibiades,
Yeah.
they pronounce Alcibiades.
Exactly. That's how in Russian it would be pronounced Alkiviad.
Right. The Greeks say Alcibiades. And
Yeah.
Achilles.
Really? They say Alcibiades? I would imagine they would say C would be there like a K. Alkiviad.
Alcibiades. Yeah, maybe you're right. Yes, I think you may be right.
Hello, Debbie.
Hello.
Hey, Debbie, how are you?
Thank you.
Good.
So I'm
sorry?
gonna eat my dinner while you're doing this, so I hope nobody minds.
No,
No,
don't
Don't,
mind.
if you mind, I'm going to do it anyway.
we
Yeah,
like to see men eat.
gotta eat.
Yeah.
I just
Busy
finished
day.
eating.
We only mind if you don't share with us.
That's right.
Well, you can jump through the screen and I'll give you some tandoori chicken.
Ooh, hitting Indian hard. Hey, John. John.
Yeah, I can see. John has this code name.
15712. That must be an area code.
It can be like. the whole
Hi,
thing.
John. John has his
Hi,
own.
Zach.
Hey, how are you? I have
Hello,
this
John.
I have this fighter. His name is Nick Diaz, and he, you know, he has this zip code, you know, to show that he's a fighter. You know.
Missing the context here.
No, he would go to a fight and say, and he goes,
Ah.
90210, and people are like, what the hell is he talking about? That's his zip code, you know, like to show that he's tough guy, and that's a tough neighborhood. Whatever, it's not funny. Wait, listen, Larry was supposed to join. What's happened? He changed his mind. John.
You wouldn't know, I guess.
Oh, you mean my Larry?
Yeah,
Oh, Larry, yeah.
There's only one Larry.
He's avoiding me.
Oh,
Oh,
that's
really? He's avoiding you?
Yeah, we're brothers, you know.
Yeah, I know. I have a difficult relationship with my brother.
Well, it's
Well,
much better now. It was difficult for a while, but it's much better now, actually. As you age, that happens, I think.
so who is the oldest?
Larry, by 3 years.
Uh-huh.
I have a sister 3 years older than me, and we are not best friends.
Yeah, there's a strength when you're age 8 or 10. There's a real physical strength difference, which my brother
Yeah.
was a dictator.
Yes, she's very controlling.
Yes, I agree. But it's much better now. As you get older, there are fewer people to hang on to, I think. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's reached out to me because I have a family and she doesn't, so. Oh, well. We just have such different values, and I don't know. Some of the things that come out of her mouth are a little scary.
Sense political differences.
Yeah, political and lifestyle, and I don't know, she's just a banana.
Who are you discussing?
My sister, of course.
Yeah, we talk about that, how siblings, have this strange relationship, rivalry or whatever.
I see.
And don't get me started on my mother. Oh my gosh.
Okay. So I don't know. Do you see time?
Devices connected.
What? Whose device?
You heard that. It's a crazy thing. I didn't touch it, and it just decides to announce that. So sorry, I will mute me when it gets important. Okay. Oops, not that.
So we're probably gonna wait like 5-10 minutes. See people join. More people join. Maybe
How long is this for?
usually 2 hours.
Okay, because I
I
can
mean,
only stay an
with
hour,
Okay.
but I
Whatever.
thought I'd catch what I could of it.
All right.
I'm sure it's going to be great.
Well, it's a different format than other meetings, so decided to try this. So it's I don't know Okay, the way I want to run it is I do a little introduction and then we go and read excerpts and then discuss them one by one. So that way we
Oh, okay.
have um, specific things to talk about. And we just go through the books. I selected number of excerpts, as many as we could manage, depending on the time. So, but
Sounds good.
so Zach, you tell me when do you think
I'm still
we
trying to
wanna-
see if I can pull up the Word document. I really don't like the format of it.
yeah, well, it's okay. We'll read it either way. I can read it because I have a copy of it on my phone
yeah, I think that's
in
probably
a
going to be the
normal
best.
format, so I could read it. Of course, I may mispronounce.
Maybe
So some of the
what's
things-
best also is when you read it, you kind of also tell us what you think about it and what it represents, and then everybody will dive in with their own.
Yeah, well, some of them I make comments. Some of them, self-explanatory. Yeah, I have some notes here to go by, and I'm sure people will contribute.
Give it 5 more minutes because I don't know if people are signing, what's going on.
Maybe, Greg, we should also talk a little bit about who Plutarch was.
Yeah, I
And what
will.
his-
I'm
what his point of view is.
I'm gonna talk to it in the beginning. So,
Good.
yeah, it's so what time do we want to start? Give it.
7:07. How about that?
Okay, sounds good. 3 more minutes. Okay.
I just 25 signed up, 8 showed up, which is awesome. It's some disparity. It's some
Well,
disparity.
It really
On the
doesn't matter.
weekend, 25 show up, 25 sign, 27 show up. That's on the weekend.
Well, it really the numbers are not important here. Whoever,
Yeah,
we
people
have
are
the people
trickling.
who matter. That's the most important.
Were you completely physical before the pandemic?
Yes, we were completely physical.
Because I
We
think
the first one we did, it was in March. That was not physical. In fact, we did one in January. We started in January, and the group has grown to 200 people, which is crazy. And we get 25, 30 people on the weekends. Wednesdays are a little shallow, 15, 16 people, but
But I don't think we're gonna go back to normal anytime soon. Anyway, yeah,
no,
it's well maybe another year or so. That's what I think. But even if things will get back to normal, we could still have one online, one physical, right?
Right.
That's because now we're so used to this zooming. I mean, it's just you can't give it up now. It becomes so. Okay, you tell me when we're ready.
1 more minute, and then you can go
Okay.
ahead. Whoever comes. I'm just monitoring
Sure.
people coming.
Yeah.
All right, Greg, go ahead.
Okay. All right. So I'm Greg, and obviously, as you all know, I'm a history buff. I'm not a professional. So we're gonna discuss Plutarch's Life of Pericles. And first, wanted to say about Plutarch. You could see he lived from 46 AD to 119. He was born in Chaeronea. As a result of he's most famous for his parallel lives, and also another collection of Essay speeches called Moralia. A lot of it was lost. I think only 78 survived from that, and the parallel life only 23 pairs survived, but a number of them were lost, especially those like of Philip the second of Macedon and Epaminondas, Scipio Africanus, and Scipio Aemilianus. Those certainly, I think, is a big loss. But 23 survived. They of course, have been truncated sometimes and some tampered with by later writers. But the main thing, as a result of writing especially parallel lives, Plutarch was a celebrity in the Roman world. However, it seems like he was very modest guy. He mostly stayed at his city in Chaeronea, participated in some local events, at some point even served as a mayor of the city. And then the last 30 years of his life, he spent as a priest in the temple of Apollo in Delphi. And that's where he died. I actually wonder that for ages, a lot of important people come to Delphi and opened up, told stories. They also been a major source of information transfer. And I just wonder if he had an access to some resources there. But definitely he was interested in lives of biographies. I'm not going to list all of them. He was also a philosopher. He was a Platonist, middle. It's called Middle Platonist. There are three periods in philosophy: the Platonist, Middle, and then Neoplatonist. Naturally, the Platonist philosophy was idealism. So there was an opposition to Stoic materialism and also Epicurean atheism. So he professed the idea of pure idea of God, and also he strongly defends freedom of will and the immortality of the soul. So that's my little introduction. Anyone else wants to add anything or have any questions?
Yeah, let me add one thing, which is Plutarch. If you were to ask him what he was, I think he would have said he was a moralist. He certainly didn't think of himself as a historian or as a biographer. All of his writings were to basically show people as examples, as moral exemplars, either of good or bad or so forth. And it's very clear in the beginning of the Pericles. He has this long thing where he says, someone listens to music, but they don't want to become a musician, or they shouldn't. But if they see somebody doing good deeds, they want to emulate them and also do good deeds, right? That's kind of always where Plutarch is coming from.
Yeah, John here, I was struck reading the Pericles section. He assumes you know the history already because he's totally focused on the moral aspects of Pericles' character. But I found myself forced to go to Wikipedia to find out what the basic facts and timelines were of his career, because Plutarch doesn't offer any help at all. It's sort of all the events are just floating around without any organization, as far as I could tell.
Yeah, he didn't give specific dates, and besides,
No.
they would be different. They didn't measure. They had a calendar, but it was it wasn't like ours.
I have a question on Plutarch and religion. You say he believed in a pure God and the immortality of the soul. That kind of sounds like Judeo-Christian, not like Greek polytheism. What was his, do you know what his religion would have been, or that of the
No,
elite
no,
Greeks of the time?
no, definitely Greeks of the time, because he was a priest of Apollo. He served as a priest, and he for 30 years. That was his in the later life when he wrote most of it. That was his responsibilities, and clearly he was Greek. He really was polytheist, and certainly Apollo was a main deity that he served. But he definitely was polytheist.
But,
He was highly suspicious of supernatural phenomena.
Yes.
I read he didn't believe in omens, which was standard. I was surprised he was a priest of Apollo, because maybe he was paying lip service and saw these aspects as being characteristic of the lower classes.
Well, I think a position in Delphi also had political ramifications.
Yes.
And I think as a Platonist, the notion is the idea of the good. I mean, Plato talks about the soul and talks about what, certainly the Neoplatonists became very influential to Christianity and were heading themselves towards a notion of monotheism, which didn't mean that they couldn't give lip service to the old gods, but I think that on a deeper philosophical level, I think he was a monotheist.
Yeah, I think I remember reading that the Greeks of this period, including Plato and Aristotle, that they regarded the stories of Zeus and Hera and Apollo and so on, the anthropomorphic character stories about the gods, as just being folklore, and they didn't really take them seriously.
Or they thought that
Yeah.
they were stories of great men who had then been deified subsequently. I mean, that was very big during the Hellenistic period, that that Hercules was a real person at one time who was posthumously deified and then worshipped as a god.
Okay. Well, yeah, it's interesting, but it's all would be really a speculation. Certainly, we know the greatest Christian philosopher who lived like at the end of the 4th century. I don't know, it just like escaped me, from Bishop of Hippo.
Augustine.
Augustine, yeah, that's right. Well, yeah, he was a Neoplatonist before he converted to Christianity. All right, let's go to next slide. And so these are the, basically the time period for who Pericles was. Just in general, he lived from 495 to 429. He died, there was a plague in Athens at the beginning of the war, and he actually died from plague, as well as his 2 legitimate sons as well. So he came to power, it says, after the revolution. This is not really a revolution. It's more of a like a struggle of clans. So the opposing clan, and we will definitely will see it in Plutarch's life, was led by the Simon, son of Miltiades, the great general of Marathon battle. He led that, and Pericles managed to win this battle, political battle, and stand Simon to ostracism. Was applied ostracism to him. So just to reiterate, the ostracism was lasting usually 10 years, and the usually applied to the leading. It's like a battle of factions applied to the leading figures, and After 10 years, they would come back and assume their civic duties with no problems, their property still intact. And there was only one person per year. It was done only once a year, and one person per year could be ostracized. So
When you
yeah.
say his title was general in chief, was he one of the archons?
No,
Yes,
no.
at
he
some
was,
point he was Archon, but
he was the
mostly he was
strategos.
general. What?
He was the strategos.
Yes, Strategos,
Yeah.
yeah, is a general.
So
was his
the
head.
archons could only hold their position for 1 year.
Yes, he
But
was
the
Archon
strategos-
at some point, but
So
but not all the time. Yeah,
But really, the strategos is what gave him consistency and the ability to be there year after year after year. Because that was, for the Athenian magistrates was chosen by lot from the citizens. But the generals, that was too important to do something like that. So that was, there was real a requirement that you could be effective. And so Pericles was militarily very, very competent, and that was the position that he held year after year after
and
year.
he held. It was also an elective position, by the way, and he held it. He
But
was
not by
really-
lot,
No, not by law.
not random like some of the
Right,
others.
right, not random. He but definitely he was a person of great stature and great orator, and a lot of people. And we will see, as we read it. I think um, um, I think it was said pretty well in the text. So as you see, all of this thing, he changed a number of the laws. He was a Democrat versus aristocratic party, and Alcmenid. He was from Alcmenid clan. This is from the old times, considered to be one of the aristocratic clans. But still, he was trying to. In a way, he was kind of a populist. He had, also wanted to see what people wanted, but he really thought how to
Yeah.
make Athens great.
Yeah, I think the consensus now is among historians, he was a sincere Democrat. It wasn't,
Right.
he was from a very noble family. So
Sure.
it could have been something like Julius Caesar did. The aristocrat pretends to be a populist, but
Right.
Pericles seems to have meant it based on, he gave that famous funeral oration, which endorsed democracy.
Right. And he also was kind of known to be incorruptible, though that the Greeks didn't believe that it's possible. But at least for the Greek of those days, he had some principle. All right. So now we're gonna read one of the um, uh, excerpts. So I read the first one, and before I read it, I want to see that has to do that that he was that Plutarch paired him with Fabius Maximus. So the Quintus Fabius Maximus was the Roman statement, and by the way, this excerpt kind of explains, because it's hard to understand why he paired him. So it was a Roman statement at the time of the Second Punic War, and it was a very difficult times. He was a dictator, who was elected dictator for 4 years. Also, dictator is elected for 1 year in Rome, and he was elected 4 times. And he basically, at the time when he was faced with a superior general like Hannibal, he chose this tactic, what they call Fabian tactics, that now we usually call it guerrilla war. That's probably was kind of an innovative way how not to engage directly, because Hannibal was so powerful and effective general. However, at the end of his last year of his dictatorship, the 2 consuls, Gaius Terentius Varro and Lucius Aemilius Paulus, they decided that doesn't work. They have to engage Hannibal in a major battle, and that led to a disaster of the Battle of Cannes in 2016. So after that, Rome was at the lowest point probably in its history, or maybe one of the lowest points, and they came back to Fabius Maximus, who continued his tactic for many years, and eventually kind of weared Hannibal down. And though he was against young Scipio Africanus, who wanted to take the fight back to Carthage, he eventually stuck aside. So now we'll yeah.
This was a puzzle to me, why Plutarch paired Pericles
Exactly.
with Fabius.
I exactly.
Oh, well, please continue.
Yeah, basically it is a puzzle because Fabius Maximus was kind of like leading at the worst times, while Pericles led it at the best times. But I think, yeah,
I think the similarity is that they both notably refused to engage the enemy when when the popular wanted to. So Fabius Maximus, whose cognomen was the Cunctator, which means the delayer, he refused battle with Hannibal all the time, and it was a very unpopular position. But he wanted to Hannibal had been beating the crap out of them every time they engaged.
right.
And he realized that their advantage was in their position and being home country, and that the only way they could lose was by engaging Hannibal.
Right.
And Pericles, said when the Spartans, invaded Attica, Pericles said, "Don't engage, stay behind the walls."
Okay.
Right. So I think that may be the real similarity.
That could be, but also I think the main similarity is in their character. And let me just read this little excerpt, and then we'll continue, because I think it shows up here. So I have decided to persevere in my writing of lives, and so have composed this 10th book containing the life of Pericles and that of Fabius Maximus, who wages such lengthy war with Hannibal. The men were alike in their virtues, and more especially in their gentleness and rectitude, and by their ability to endure the follies of their people and of their colleagues in office. They proved of the greatest service to their countries. I think that kind of sums up why he paired them off. I think I don't know if you could see this. It's on the like similarity of certain qualities of character, and on the way how they dealt with people and their colleagues, moving in a very unpopular direction. So anybody wants to add anything, John?
No, not really. I agree with that. I'm no expert in the period. My knowledge of Greek history is abysmal. This group is getting me interested in it. I would just say Pericles died early in the Peloponnesian War. So to what extent his policies led to the defeat of Athens, we can discuss. As far as Fabius goes, he did have the right strategy. And the thing about the Romans, they could take, against Hannibal, they took 2 or 3 major defeats at Cannae. The ancient number is usually 100,000 Romans died in one day, which is hard to believe, but it was certainly tens of thousands. But the thing about the Romans, they kept coming back no matter how much they lost. I mean, they did not, it was quite an amazing feat historically. There's no other people like them that way. But Pericles, whether he was a political genius, I mean, he built the Parthenon and all of that, but Athens did not end up in a good place. And to what extent he was to blame for that, we should probably discuss. As far as Flavius goes, as Paul said, it was a politically disastrous for him, the delaying strategy, because people wouldn't, just wouldn't put up with it. Romans don't hide from the enemy. But I saw one historian who compared it to George Washington's strategy in the American Revolution. He just dodged the British as much as he could, because the British were a long way from home, and their willpower couldn't hold up forever. So.
Same thing in Russia in the Napoleonic War.
Yeah.
Right? What's his name?
Yes.
Kutuzov. He just kept
Kutuzov,
retreating.
right.
Well, it was before Kutuzov was Barclay de Tolly. Kutuzov came at the,
Yeah, but Kutuzov was the guy that refused to engage. Everybody else wanted to fight.
Barclay de Tolly as well.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, that was his strategy. Kutuzov picked it up at the end. He was not there.
I mean, he was there.
Was
The
there
Battle
all
of
the way from
Borodino.
Smolensk.
Battle of Borodino. He was there already. Right?
Yeah, he was. I mean,
Yeah.
Kutuzov was
prior-
there all the way from Smolensk all the way to Moscow. So it was mostly Kutuzov.
No, but they were withdrawing due to Barclay de Tolly and Greg.
Yeah, but I think Barclay de Tolly was chief of staff. I think eventually.
No, he was the Kutuzov at the time. Him and Bagration.
Bagration.
Yeah.
Bagration, but Bagration was more of a field commander.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
He wasn't
All right.
a commander in chief.
Let's not digress. So let's go
Back-
to the next one, to the next excerpt. And this excerpt basically like tells you of the lineage of Pericles according to the Cleisthenes reforms, and that's very interesting. I know for those who missed, Archaic period and Cleisthenic reforms, but let's read it first. So Pericles was of the tribe of Achamantis, of the Deme Colargus, and of the foremost family and the lineage on both sides. His father Xantippus, who conquered the generals of the king at Mycale in 479 BC, married Agariste, granddaughter, actually she was a niece, of the Cleisthenes, the guy who actually created the reforms, who in such noble fashion expelled the Pisistrates, the clan of Pisistrates, and destroyed their tyranny, instituted laws, and established a constitution best attempered for the promotion of harmony and safety. So first of all, if you recall, he reformed Cleisthenic reform. Cleisthenes reformed the Athenian society, and he divided all citizens into 10 tribes. And the tribe Pericles belonged to was Achamantis. And then each tribe had demes. Demes is like districts in various areas, because he wanted to have representation in each tribe from different layers of the society. And prior to that, there was people at the port, there were people in the city, and there were people in the hills. This kind of three category of people, he mixed them up, and there were 139 demes in Athenian society, and 10 tribes that were consisting of demes. So now his father Xantippus, if you recall, he was one of the generals during the Second Persian War, admiral actually, and he was very instrumental and won the sea battle at Mycale. It's actually near the island of Samos. So Mycale is in the close to Ephesus in Ionia. So he was a very notable person. And then he also says that his lineage was that on a mother's side, he was a relative of Cleisthenes himself. His mother, Agorista, was
It was
niece of
his uncle, right?
Cleisthenes was uncle of Agarista, even though he says granddaughter, but from the contemporary sources, well, he probably made a mistake.
Yeah. But what
Plutarch.
happened to the between Miltiades and father of Pericles? Something had happened. Well, obviously he was ostracized, right? His father, and then even though he was such a general, so to speak, but something had happened between him and Miltiades. Miltiades, we all know, was the hero of the marathon and all that stuff.
Yeah, I'm not sure actually. Do you know this story?
No, but I know that he was ostracized, his father, for 10 years before he came back. But as you have,
Well, these are two opposing clans, and as a matter of fact, their children, played it out later on. Pericles and Simon. Simon is the son of Miltiades. So
Right.
he was leading aristocratic party, and Pericles led democratic. But we actually see it later on. Okay, so now this is my comments. So let's just go to the next slide.
Oh, okay.
So now, and it's kind of related to my comments, because this is about the Anaxagoras and his influence. By the way, anyone wants to say anything about prior? No. Okay. All right. So I'm going to read it. By the way, if anyone wants to read, I'd really appreciate, since we see it here, anyone wants to read. I mean, my reading is probably not the best.
I'll read if you want.
Go ahead, Debbie.
Sure.
Okay. This man Pericles, extravagantly admired and being gradually filled full of the so-called higher philosophy and elevated speculation, he not only had, as it seems, a spirit that was solemn and a discourse that was lofty and free from plebeian and reckless effrontery, but also a composure of countenance that never relaxed into laughter, a gentleness of carriage and cast of attire that suffered no emotion to disturb it while he was speaking, a modulation of voice that was far from boisterous, and many similar characteristics which struck all his hearers with wondering amazement.
So this is basically about character of Pericles.
Yes.
So if anybody wants to add, but this is.
I wanted to comment that
Mhm.
this kind of, in a certain sense, kind of sums up the ethos of the whole classical period. I'm going to be doing a presentation on classical art, and I'm going to refer back to this passage later, because at this period of Greek art, you'll see that you don't see the people that are that they make statues of. They don't laugh. They don't show emotion. They're just like this description of Pericles. They're solemn. They're dignified. And in a certain sense, unreadable. So it's very much in harmony with what was the artistic ethos at the same time.
By the way, Zach, I apologize. I thought it was my count, but it was not. Can we go to the previous one? Because there is another excerpt that I wanted to read, and this is about the Anaxagoras. I thought it was, this is not, because the different, font, and I thought it was, no, it is also the author. Let me read this one. And this is about major influence on Pericles of his friend Anaxagoras. So, but the man who most consorted with Pericles and did most to clothe him with a majestic demeanor that had more weight than any demagogue's appeals, yes, and who lived lifted on high and exalted the dignity of his character was Anaxagoras the Clazomenian. So the reason I wanted to read it is because it is very important because this been such a major influence, and that was Ionian philosopher Anaxagoras of Clazomene. Clazomene is the city in Ionia, still right now is archaeological site. So he was a little older, 5 years older than Pericles. He lived from 500 to 428, and he arrived to Athens in 479 BCE. What's interesting is that what we know that he was drafted by Xerxes into the Persian army, and a lot of people believe that he appeared in Athens in 479, and of course it's a speculation. A lot of people appear that as a part of the Persian army, he went to through the northern. He went to Thessaly, through that period into Greece, and eventually I don't know what happened, how he got separated from the army, but a lot of historians believe that that's how he got into Greece, is with the Persian army of Xerxes. And since he was in Athens, he was a prominent philosopher, companion, and friend of, and certainly, as we see in this little excerpt, made a big effect on the character and of Pericles. All right, so now that's. Anyone wants to add? Anyone wants to add or ask questions? Okay, so let's go to the next one. Yeah. Okay. So who wants to read this one? Anyone? Volunteers?
Happy to read again if you want me to.
Sure.
Okay. A story is told that once on a time, the head of a horned ram was brought to Pericles. How do you say Pericles?
Pericles.
Pericles from his country place, and that I am upon the seer when, I guess that's what this is, when he saw, I came upon the seer. Is that what he's trying to say? That I am upon the
No,
seer?
the seer's name is Lampon.
Oh, Lampon, because there's a space in between.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
and it
very,
looks
it's
like an
very,
eye.
it's
Okay.
very misleading.
Yeah, okay. That Lampon the seer, when he saw how the horn grew strong and solid from the middle of the forehead, declared
That.
declared that. I was looking at one horned ram. I think I said homed ram.
Okay, no, we got it.
Yeah, okay. Declared that whereas there were two powerful parties in the city, that Thucydides,
Thucydides.
Thucydides.
I read these, but I never hear them out loud because I read on my own.
Uh-huh.
Thucydides, so now I'm learning. And that of Pericles, the mastery would finally devolve upon one man, the man to whom this sign had been given. Thucydides was overthrown by Pericles. Pericles was entrusted with the entire control of all the interest of the people. So it's the Thucydides and Pericles.
Right.
Okay.
So let me make clarification here. So we all know the historian Thucydides. This is not him, but that is his relative nevertheless. So this is Thucydides, a son of Milesius, and was likely related to later historian and general Thucydides, son of Olorus. So Thucydides also, this Thucydides, probably the same, also was a relative of Simon and was actually his successor when when Pericles managed to subject Simon to ostracism, uh, uh, his successor was Thucydides, and following that, the main struggle continued now between Pericles and Thucydides. By the way, Simon, the previous one, also was just wanted to say, just to add, um, to the whole picture. You know, he was not only that he was son of Miltiades, but he also was a general, very successful general in his own right. He actually won the major battle of the Eurymedon River in Pamphylia, which is in Asia Minor, in 466 BC. This is against Persians, as a leader of the Delian League. At that time, after the war, Athenians created Delian League, where a lot of cities from from the Asia Minor and a lot of islands, they kind of created alliance. And the island of Delos, which is one of the Cycladian islands, is kind of like in the middle, and they decided to keep the treasury there and combine their fleets. And this was for the protection of Greeks against the Persians. And as a result of it, later on, they conducted series of consequential wars with Persians, and one of them, major one, was that Battle of Eurymedon River. It was a sea battle, and Simon was the general who won that battle. That was in 466. Nevertheless, in 461, that's when he was ostracized for some other things. Now, the
Well,
battle, yeah?
Yeah, I just had a general question. I've always been puzzled by this. The Greeks seem so individualistic, but did someone like Pericles or Thucydides, did they just rely on their relatives for support? Or did they have organized groups of any kind? Is that known?
They had a, yes, they definitely, they were representative leaders of their party. So there was a party.
The
And,
Democrats
Plutarch,
versus the,
Plutarch even gives it a name. He says that Thucydides was a leader of, what do we call them, the best, and you know, it wasn't the best and the brightest, but it was two adjectives which describe the aristocratic party.
By the Pericles was the leader of the party, Good and True. By the way, that was the name of the party that Pericles led, and of course they were leaders. And by eliminating the leader, eventually, so Thucydides was also this. Thucydides was ostracized in 442 BCE.
Could I make a comment on Anaxagoras, or are you going to get into his philosophy more?
No.
Because Anaxagoras is famous in the history of science, philosophy of science, as being one of the very first of these Greek Ionian philosophers of science. So the sun was not the chariot of Apollo riding across the heavens. The sun was a natural body, a huge body out beyond the earth, giving off energy. And matter was made up of various elements. He didn't, I don't think he used the word elements, but various fundamentally unchanged substances that could combine in various forms to give us the broad range of materials we know. So this was early physics, and it was actually pretty reasonably solid stuff, and had nothing to do with the polytheistic gods. There were no natural gods. It was really a natural philosophy as physics was known really up until the 20th century. Okay, thanks.
Okay, anyone else want to add anything or comment?
Well, I guess just that presumably this, and I guess Anaxagoras was later accused of sacrilege, I guess because he didn't respect the old gods. And I think this may be characteristic of Pericles himself. Pericles was interested by this natural philosophy. Okay, thanks.
The one you talked about the Delian League, so we should do, just to give some context here. The Delian League started as an alliance led by Athens, but it didn't last that way very long, and it essentially became the Athenian Empire. So when it started, all of the members of the alliance, it was a mutual defense alliance, and then very shortly, what happened was all of the allies stopped furnishing troops. They just started furnishing money. And Athens furnished all the troops, and the money ultimately became tribute. And the Athenians moved their treasury from Delos to Athens. And then a lot of the other events that Plutarch talks about, in particular the war against Samos, are all the members of the Delian League revolting, because it was no longer, you know, a mutual defense. It was now they were just, you know, provinces for all intents and purposes. They were subjects of Athens.
Just to expand on this, originally Athens gave a choice. You could either provide ships and the people to man them, or you pay and we will build the ships for you. So for the Delian League, and a lot of cities, the Delian League was comprised of over 300 cities, city-states, and a lot of them chose just to pay. And Delian League was organized in 478 BCE, right after the Second Persian War. And at the time, actually, Pericles did this one in 454 BCE. He moved the treasury from Delos to Athens, and that's kind of was symbolic conversion to the Athenian, you know, empire in a way. And now, you know, he actually used a lot of this money to rebuild Athens.
Right.
So, anyway, let's move on.
One of the things that they actually changed, you know, they started referring to the money from the allies using as tribute rather than a contribution.
Let's go to the next one.
I'll read that. I'll read this one, Greg, if you want.
Sure.
It was thought that in the feature Pericles was like the tyrant, Persistratus, and when men well on their years remarked also that the voice was sweet and his tongue grip and speedy in discourse, they were struck with amazement at the resemblance. Besides, since he was rich of a brilliant lineage and had a friend of greatest influence, and he feared that he might be ostracized.
So this is, well, first of all, they said that he looked very much like Pisistratus, but, you know, it could have been construed as that he should actually end up like Pisistratus, you know, and obviously, you know, this reflects how ostracism was used as a tool of rival faction, because once you become very powerful, you know, you became a candidate for ostracism. So that's really what this is about. By the way, Pisistratus did a lot of good stuff for Athens, as well as Pericles. Okay, anyone want to comment on this?
I have a general question, Greg. This literal piece. I mean, obviously, you chose, you know, one great personality from the Greek times and one from Latin times. What was his, so to speak, an end goal, or so to speak, was he enamored by the greatness of these people? That's why he had a sense of where he would present it to the world, like almost like introducing them to the world, so to speak.
Well, he was a Greek living during the Roman Empire, so he wanted to show, kind of revive Greek culture and show the parallel between Roman heroes and Greek heroes. You know, I believe he really wanted to popularize, because a lot of people keep forgetting. I'm not talking about educated people, but the Romans, as a nation, you know, they probably forgot about a lot of those figures, and his parallel lives were very, very popular. Everybody talked about them, and by this, I believe he wanted to show that Greeks were at least as great, you know, statements and generals as Romans, and wanted to introduce them to the general public. That's my opinion.
I think that's right. But I think in the introduction, he indicates that by great, he doesn't just mean these were important historical figures. These were virtuous figures that should be emulated. He thinks these were great people in the sense of being virtuous people, that people should know about them so that they could try to be like them.
Though he did give some negative examples as well in his parallel lives.
Right.
Okay,
Well-
let's move to the next one.
Anybody wants to give it a shot? If not, I can read it.
Okay, I'll read it because I have on my phone. That's pretty small. Okay. Pericles decided to devote himself to the people, espousing the cause of the poor and the many instead of few and the rich, contrary to his own nature, which was anything but popular. He saw that Simon was very aristocratic in his sympathies and was held in extraordinary affection by the party of the good and true. Yeah, I apologize. That was Simon's party. He began to court the favor of the multitude, thereby securing safety for himself and power to wield against his rival. So that kind of shows him as a political enemy, how he chose this. Let me read the continuation. Thucydides describes the administration of Pericles as rather aristocratic, in name a democracy, but in fact a government by the greatest citizens. And this is the Thucydides, his rival. That's how he describes Pericles. This is obviously criticism of Pericles coming from his opponent, Thucydides. So, but many others say that people was first led on by him into allotment of public lands, festival grants, and distribution of fees for public services, thereby falling into bad habits and becoming luxurious and wanton under the influence of his public measures, instead of frugal and self-sufficing. So this is he wants to portray Pericles as the populist, that he is using cheap tricks, and he actually, in a way, it's a similar critique that nowadays people have against the welfare. You know, I'm talking about the conservatives have against the welfare. I mean that he spends a lot of money on people, give them a lot of benefits, and they become lazy and a waste of funds and so on and so on. So that's kind of interesting how um, um,
Yeah,
how
they
it
kind of
Was,
depict him like a like an early liberal Democrat.
right,
was
right.
was this the first time in history that state resources were used to support the poor? Because I mean, Kaiman used to offer free meals to anybody who showed up at his house, but that was personal.
Right,
But is
right.
this the first public?
Well,
Yeah,
because he collected taxes. I mean, that's why he was
Yeah.
able to do
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
but the point is that he did it by kind of creating jobs. So it was kind of like FDR in some way. So in
yes,
other words,
yes, and
like-
as a matter of fact, he is like FDR later on, especially as we said when he moved the Delian League treasury into Athens, and he basically started a lot of public projects. We're actually going to go into this later on because he describes that it is very much like FDR And you know that Athens were destroyed by Persians, so and was slowly started to rebuild. But the major building was done during the Pericles, after the funds
Hmm.
became available. Okay, so let's go to the next one.
I can read that one if you want.
Sure.
Pericles, strong in affection of the people, led successful party against the counselor of the Areopagus. Not only was a consul robbed of most of his jurisdiction by the Ephialtes, but Simon also, on the charge of being a lover of the Sparta and a hater of the people, was ostracized. Such was the power of Pericles amongst the people. Should I continue? Or?
Well, just want to say he was. You remember? I don't know. You how to pronounce it correctly, Simon or Simon. But yeah, he was ostracized in 461. That's the time when I think Ephialtes died or was assassinated by that time. Uh, I don't know if you and Pericles became kind of like sole leader of his party. All right, let's
Just
read.
a question. Wasn't the name of the person that supposedly showed the Persians the back route around Thermopylae, wasn't he also an Ephialtes?
Yes, that's exactly what I
Yeah,
thought too.
yeah. But
Hmm.
yeah, that's right. But Ephialtes was a very famous statement, and Pericles was looking up to him. Pericles was his protege. He continued his, what he started. Okay, let's read the next one.
Pericles dispatched thousands of settlers to the Chersonesus.
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 It's
Oh,
in
that's in
Crimea.
Crimea. That's a
It's in
Crimea, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's Black Sea. The
Right.
500 of Naxos and to the Andros half that number, and 1,000 to Thrace to settle with Bisalti, and the others to Italy, when the site of Sybaris was settled, which they named Thuri. All this he did by the way of lining the city of its mob of lazy and idle busybodies, rectifying the embarrassments of the poor people and giving the allies for neighbors an imposing garrison which should prevent rebellion.
So just to add, usually the colonies were created because of either some dramatic event or overpopulation. So he basically says that he wanted to take some poor because there were apparently too many of them, and that create a rebellion eventually, and he decided to create colonies. So in 447 BCE, he created a colony in Chersonesus, and this is the area near Sevastopol in Crimea. The famous city Sevastopol, which is like in the most southern part of the Crimea. Then also the island of Naxos, famous for where supposing, according to the legend, Theseus left Ariadne there. An island of Andros, and Sybaris. So you know the word Sybarit. Uh, uh, am I pronouncing it right? Sybarit? The word Sybarit?
It's Sybaritic or Sybarite.
That's right, Sybarite. So that word comes from this city, by the way, Sybaris. This is the city in the southern area of Italy. That's where the very bottom where there is like a boot. So there was Sybaris was very popular and started to blossom based on the trade. We're talking about 6th century BC, one of the colonies. And the other colony was Crotona, was on the other side of the bay. I'm talking about that bay, at the southern Italy, the very southern bay. Um, and Crotona were very envious, and that was at the time, by the way, of Pythagoras, who lived in Crotona, and they decided to make war on Sybaris, and eventually destroyed the city, leveled it completely. So that's why he said that when Pericles sent people to create another colony, Sybaris was leveled. It was no longer a city at the time, because that war happened in 510 BCE, and supposedly Pythagoras participated in that war. He lived in Crotona. So, and in 444 BCE, we're talking about 50 some years later, they created a new colony called Thurii. Okay, let's go to the, anyone want to say anything?
Anyone who wants to give a chance? Anyone wants to say anything? Or this is a free form participation. So if anybody wants to give any kind of like comments, no?
Okay, let's go to
All right,
the next
moving.
one. So this is the, by the way, when the Pericles commissioned massive public works of building and renovation, as we said, similar to FDR, and brought prosperity to the people and popularity to himself. So let me read this. Thucydides and his party kept denouncing Pericles for playing fast and loose with people money and annihilating the revenues. Well then, said he, let it not have been spent on your account, but mine. I'm talking about Pericles said, well, I'll spend my own money then. And I will make the inscriptions of dedication in my own name. When Pericles has said this, whether it was that they admired his magnanimity or vied with his ambition to get the glory for his work, they cried out with a loud voice and bade him take freely from public funds for his outlays and to spare not whatsoever. And finally, he ventured to undergo with Thucydides the contest of ostracism, wherein he secured his rival's banishment in 442 BCE and the dissolution of the faction which has been arrayed against him. So that like was complete victory, and from there on, the opposition was so weakened that Pericles ruled virtually unopposed. Any comments on that one?
Yeah, I'd just like to ask, what's this competition? They threw out one guy a year, I understand. So they didn't compete for the honor, did they?
They competed. There are two opposing parties. Thucydides was leading the conservative party, and if you could say that, and Pericles led the Democratic Party. So what happened is that in 442, Pericles eventually challenged Thucydides to an ostracism. He said that like either you or me, let's draw the lot, let people decide, the way, there was this pieces of clay that called ostraca, and people would put the name of a person they wanted to be ostracized, they put in the urn, and eventually they counted, and those who got the most was ostracized for 10 years. So he challenged him on this, and Thucydides lost and was ostracized in 442, and that was happened. And because there was no, I would say there was no another person of similar stature, in the good and true party, this party was weakened tremendously, and didn't present much of a competition afterwards.
By the way, if I could comment on that, my understanding is that the formal rule of ostracism is it could happen once a year, and then there would be a vote. So it was Pericles used that rule on this particular occasion, said, okay, let's have an ostracism vote this year, and it'll just be me against Thucydides. So he was this wasn't the rule that there would be one of such event every year with two competing people, but that there could be an ostracism, and people could just vote for whoever they wanted. But in this case, Thucydides Pericles used it as a one-on-one competition.
Yep.
Another good comparison of Pericles and FDR is to see that Pericles was a really good politician, and he really knew how to stay, on message when he spoke, which Plutarch makes really, really clear that he was really careful not to comment. He didn't go to people's house for dinner. He didn't want to be in any situation where he might say something that could be used against him. And he was a master at manipulating the popular assembly. The decisions in Athens were made by the popular assembly, but basically they were voting on motions that were put in front of them. They weren't actually saying, it wasn't, let's do this. And Pericles was a master at when to call the vote and how to phrase it and how to put himself in a situation where he would escape from his enemies and from, because there's always people that are jealous of somebody who's powerful and successful.
Okay, let's do the next one. All right.
I'll read it. I'll read that one.
Sure. Go ahead.
Thus then, seeing that the political differences were entirely remitted, and the city had become a smooth surface, as it were, and altogether united, he brought under his own control Athens, and all the P49 issues depends on the Athenians, tributes, armies, triremes, the islands, the city, the vast power derived from the Hellenes.
Yeah. This is, he is talking about Delian League. We kind of discussed that already.
All right.
So yeah, keep going.
For no less than 15 of these years did he secure an imperial sway that was continuous and unbroken by the means of his annual tenure of the office of general. During all these years, he kept himself unattained by corruption.
Okay, that's what we talked about in the beginning, that for 15 years he was elected the general, and that he was known to be incorruptible. Anyone?
Yeah.
Okay, the
I
next
think this
one.
One thing, I take it there were no other generals at any one time?
No, there were many generals.
There were many,
They could be the same. It's not just one general. There could be 10 generals.
Now this one is kind of big, Greg. Maybe you want to summarize it for us?
But by the way,
no.
I think there was one sort of general in chief, one of the archons, I guess originally.
Yeah.
So I think when they say by means of his annual tenure of the office of general, I think this was the primary head of the military.
Yeah,
no?
Probably one of the generals, but the supreme commander, something like this, right?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
So the only government organization was that Council of Areopagus?
No, Areopagus was actually taken away. That was one of the things. No, they had a general assembly, and they also had I think they called ecclesia, and they also had they also had, yeah, bulle, I think.
Bulos was like steering committee.
Right.
That would set the agenda.
So do we know how they organized the construction of the Parthenon and the rest of the improvements? Do we have, I mean, the nuts and bolts of who hired the contractors and the workers? Do we know?
No, well, no, I don't know these details, but obviously, yeah,
speak from ignorance here.
they reconstruction of Parthenon and the statue of Athens, it was all done at this time, because
One comment you can make about that is that they built it very, very fast. And for that reason, the sculptors that were hired were of very different quality. So some of the sculpture on the friezes of the Parthenon is very, very high quality, and some of it is very, very second rate. So there is a sense that, you know, a lot of different people as the heads of workshops, because this would not just be an individual, you know, he would have apprentices and he would probably have slaves that would, be part of the team that would do the building, and they would basically contract out many pieces of it.
all right. So the next one, I'm going to read the first paragraph that has to do with Aspasia, because this is also an important part of his life. So let me read this. When peace has been made for 30 years between Athens and Lacedaemonians, he got a decree passed for his expedition to Samos. That happens in 440 BCE. Alleging against its people, though they were ordered to break off their war against the Milesians, it's Miletus, the city of Miletus, and this was supposedly to gratify Aspasia. She was a Milesian by birth, daughter of Axiochus, is generally agreed, and they say that it was in emulation of Thargelia, an Ionian woman of ancient times, that she made her onslaught upon the most influential man. This Thargelia came to be a great beauty and was endowed with grace of manners as well as clever wit. Inasmuch as she lived on terms of intimacy with numberless Greeks and attacked all her consorts to the king of Persia, she stealthily sowed the seeds of Persian sympathy in the cities of Greece by means of these lovers of hers, and were men of the greatest power and influence. And so Aspasia, as some say, was held in high favor by Pericles because of her rare political wisdom. Socrates sometimes came to see her with his disciples, and his intimate friends brought their wives to her to hear her discourse. Although she presided over business that was anything but honest or even reputable, since she kept the house of young courtesans. So this is very, very interesting, describing who Aspasia was and comparing her with the Thargelia. So Thargelia was a renowned hetera in ancient Greece, and she was said to have married 14 times. So and the problem. The criticism goes that they were conducting a campaign against Miletus, and they broke off that campaign and okay, let it go. And then they went to the war with to Samos, because obviously, as Paul mentioned, the city-states started to rebel, and that war was extremely costly. They lost a lot of ships, a lot of men, and Pericles was seriously, criticized for it. And obviously they claimed that, yeah, he did it for Aspasia. He got us into this war with Samos, the island of Samos, and we suffered so much. So in the Acarnanians, the Aristophanes comedy, he blames Aspasia also for Peloponnesian War as well, and because he claims that Megarian decree of Pericles, which excluded Megara from the trade with Athens, and there was a retaliation for prostitutes being kidnapped from the house of Aspasia by Megarians. So, I mean, there was like all these stories, obviously, but nevertheless, we do know that Aspasia was very educated, and even as he says, Socrates went to see her. She is also mentioned in multiple sources, so Socrates in some of his dialogues. I think in Symposium, I think that there were that woman, I forgot her name, she was supposedly represented Aspasia. So that's regarding Aspasia. Anyone wants to aid?
Can you elucidate something? I'm not clear, because I read that Pericles passed a law that restricted Athenian citizenship to
Oh, yeah.
people, both
Yeah, that's
parents
right.
were Athenian, and she
Right.
was Milesian. So
He had to
that
change
law
that law.
I mean, it's
He
very
changed this law.
confused.
Well, okay, let me talk about this a little bit. So in 451 BC, he tightened up the citizenship rule. And before, as long as your both parents were born in Athens, you were a citizen. No, as long as your father was born in Athens, you were citizen. Because women, they were not even citizens. You know, they were women. Citizens only men.
Well, I think the original law was specifically that both parents had to be Athenians, whereas in this case, Aspasia was not an Athenian.
That's what I read.
Okay, let me clarify that. From what I remember, it was you know, that originally it was only father had to be Athenian. Then that law in 451, it was besides the father being Athenian, the father of the mother had to be Athenian. That was the specific restriction that Pericles instituted in 451. He made it more difficult. The women's citizens were not considered. That's why, in a way, if the father of a woman is Athenian, she is kind of automatically also. So, so the specific one was that not only that your father had to be Athenian, but the father of your mother had to be Athenian. Only then, and this was the restriction that Pericles himself instituted, and he had to change that later on in his life because Aspasia and Pericles had to be Athenian. No, he had to change that because Aspasia, he had a child with Aspasia. Pericles the younger, and he was divorced. He divorced his wife. He had two children from her. They both actually died during the like in 430 when the plague struck, and he only had like one son left with Aspasia, Pericles the younger, who actually became a general later on, and he had to change it to make sure that he could be claimed as a citizen.
It was the plague, right?
Yeah.
That upset his plans. That he had to go back and change it.
Yes, that's right. Because his children died. His legitimate children died, so he only had one son left with Aspasia.
One comment, Greg talked earlier about Fabius Maximus and how the Romans were able to continue to field armies even after sustaining fabulous losses. And the explanation for that is all about this question of citizenship. So the Romans had a different idea of citizenship than any of the other people in the ancient world. The Roman citizenship was expansive. So the reason the Romans had these unexhaustible source of manpower is because they would expand their citizenship when they basically gained control of a region, and they would make the elites in that city Roman citizens. Whereas in Greece, they had this jealous idea that we guard your citizenship and don't let anybody else have it for any reason. And they then would find themselves in manpower squeezes, whenever, things would start to go against them.
By the way, I was under the impression that the citizenship thing had a lot to do with the grain distribution, that he wanted to be able to give it to more people. And he did this by expanding the citizenship.
Who are you talking? Pericles?
Pericles, yes.
No, he did it for he did it for very selfish reasons. That's what I read. Because
But there was another point, I think James right, that there was a rule that grain would only be distributed to citizenship, and there was some sort of backlash against that, and they relaxed that rule. I think that's correct.
Yeah, I don't think they relaxed the citizenship, but they relaxed the distribution.
All right, let's go to the next one. It's kind of it stays. No. Let's go back because we still have one paragraph there. So Pericles' own wife was near of kin to him. They were kind of relatives, and had been wedded first to Hipponicus, to whom she bore Claudius, surnamed the Rich. She bore also as the wife of Pericles Xanthippus and Paralus. After since their married life was not agreeable, he, Pericles, legally bestowed her upon another man, with her own consent, of course, and himself took Aspasia and loved her exceedingly. Twice a day, as they say, on going out and on coming in from the marketplace, he would salute her with a loving kiss. So that's the, by the way, Aspasia was about 25 years younger than Pericles. And as I said, so she's mentioned in writings of Plato, Aristophanes, Xenophon, and a few others. And the Pericles the Younger, their son, was one of the 6 strategoi who was like during the end of the Peloponnesian War. He was actually executed following the battle of Agrinossae in 406 BCE for failing to pick up survivors in a storm. An interesting information about what happened to the son of Pericles. Okay, any comments?
Yeah, I would just say from what I read, open display of emotion between a husband and a wife, particularly in the upper classes, was considered not entirely respectable. Athenian women were veiled, I believe, at least the upper classes.
In fact, any display of emotion was considered undignified, right? The ideal was to be unperturbable.
Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, all right, so this is the pretty long one. Anybody wants to read it? So I don't. Okay.
Well, if you want, I can read.
Small.
Oh, go ahead.
Out of focus for me. It's out of focus for me.
Oh, is out of focus? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it isn't.
I can send.
No, it's okay. Anybody? Okay, I can read it.
Okay.
If because I have a copy here. So
Oh,
accordingly, the Lacedaemonians, I hope I pronounce it right, and their allies invaded Attica with a great host under the leadership of Archidamus the king. Now this is the beginning of the Peloponnesian War. And they advanced, ravaging the country as they went, as far as Acharnae, where they encamped, supposing that Athenians would not tolerate it, but would fight with them out of angry pride. Pericles, however, looked upon it as a terrible thing to join battle with 60,000 Peloponnesian and Boeotian hoplites. Those who made the first invasion were as numerous as that. and stake the city itself upon the issue. So he tried to calm down those who were eager to fight and who were in distress at what the enemy was doing, obviously ravaging the countryside, by saying that trees, though cut and lopped, grew quickly, but if men were destroyed, it was not easy to get them again. Cleon, too, was already harassing him. Cleon was a new opposition leader. So Cleon, too, was already harassing him, taking advantage of the wrath and with which the citizens regarded him to make his own way towards the leadership of the people. Pericles sent out an armament of 100 ships against the Peloponnesus, did not himself sail with it, but remained behind, keeping the city on the watch and ward and well in hand until Peloponnesians withdrew. The expedition around the Peloponnesus ravaged much territory and sacked villages and small cities, while Pericles himself by land invaded the Megarid and razed it all. Wherein it was also evident that though the enemies did the Athenians much harm by land, they suffered much too at their hands by the sea, and therefore would not have protracted the war to such a length. So
I think you can say that this kind of summarizes Pericles' policy for what Athens should do in the Peloponnesian War, is stay behind the walls, don't engage the Spartans because they're better in the open field, and just go behind on their ships and just go into their, basically force them to stay at home to protect their home territory. And so the question, the hypothetical is, if his strategy had been followed consistently, the Peloponnesian War might have turned out differently. You may recall it was things like this crazy expedition to Syracuse.
That was a disaster, but that happened much later.
Yeah,
but certainly he was.
So I mean, I'm just saying that the counterfactual to wonder about is if Pericles had been able to continue to be there and lead that policy, whether his strategy might have worked.
I guess this followed in the Persian Wars. The Spartans were the powerful land army and the Athenians were the powerful naval force. So in this case, the theory was, okay, we're not going to engage them in a land battle. Right. We will engage them with sea battles. We will attack them by sea where they can't, where it's more difficult for them to defend and where we can pick the spot of the battle. So it was, it was a choice between the land battles and the sea battles. And Pericles wisely chose the sea or amphibious attacks, we might say.
Absolutely. By this time, the Athenian state had by far much bigger and more powerful fleet than during the Persian Wars, because this was really an empire. Okay. Sorry,
well, I think in the Persian Wars at the Battle of Salamis, I think the Athenians provided about 160 ships to the Battle of Salamis. The Spartans contributed 16. The Spartans simply didn't have a fleet, although some of their allies did.
I know, but by now, Athenian had a fleet maybe 10 times more.
But we'll see that, over time, the Spartans will indeed close that gap.
Yeah. That's right.
Right. So this is not going to last forever, Athenian naval supremacy.
Okay. All right. Let's let's go to the next one.
I'll read that one.
Yeah.
So how do you read it?
Pestilential
destruction fell upon Athens 430 BC. They said that Pericles was responsible for this, which because of the war had poured the rabble from the country into the walled city, that gave the mass of men no employment whatsoever.
So this is, by the way, the date, I inserted that, by the way, John, as you said, Plutarch didn't insert dates. I did that. But at this time when the plague, struck, you know, they already started to fold everyone, as of course even Pericles, that he allowed a lot of people in when Spartans invaded. He allowed a lot of people from countryside into the city. I mean, that's what they say, that they supposedly brought the flag in.
Yeah, what was striking in what I read is that they had no germ theory, of course, but they realized that being in close quarters, in closed spaces, was very dangerous, and they were enraged against Pericles because he had previously they had been out in the countryside in the open air, and they just knew that was safer. Which
And it was Pericles who was refusing to fight, because
yeah,
their thinking was if Pericles fought outside and drove them back, then they could be outside and have their farms and life would go on the way it used to. Of course, you know, as Pericles was right about the 60,000 hoplites.
Okay. You want to
Yeah,
continue?
Pericles seemed to have accomplished nothing worthy of the preparation, but after laying siege to sacred Epidaurus, which awakened a hope that it might be captured, he had no such good fortune. Because of the plague, its fierce onset destroyed not only the Athenians themselves, but also those who, in any matter whatsoever, had dealings with their forces. And Athenians being exasperated against him on this account, he tried to appease and encourage them. He did not, however, succeed in allaying their wrath, nor yet in changing their purposes. Before they got the hostile ballots into their hands, became masters of their fate, stripped him of his command, and punished him with a fine.
Okay, so
The
that's
people speak.
right.
was this a bubonic plague? Do we know for sure?
I don't believe. I don't know. I don't think it was, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah, and definitely what we know, I don't know, it may be mentioned later that first Pericles' two legitimate sons died from it, and eventually Pericles himself succumbed to that disease and died. Let's read the next one.
Oh, well, before you say that, just
Sure.
bubonic plague has its markers, the buboes, you know, and there no historian that I've come across has mentioned anything of the sort in Athens.
But yeah, and I don't
Very
know if there
prominent
are
in
any
medieval.
I don't know if there are any vivid descriptions of it, you know, that are actually contemporary by people then.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
You want to continue, or what do you
Sure.
want?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to comment on, I guess, I think legitimate sons is slightly misleading. His first, I think it was 3 sons he had with his first wife, and because she was the daughter of an Athenian, therefore they were citizens. But his 4th son, because he was a son of Aspasia, who was not the daughter of an Athenian citizen.
Right.
He was not a citizen. So it's more a matter of citizens versus non-citizens rather than legitimate or illegitimate in our sense.
Okay, yeah, that's right. By the way, out of those 3 sons you mentioned, first son was not his son. It was son from his wife's first marriage. I think it was in the text before, from what I remember. Okay, let's go.
The city made trial of its other generals and counselors for the conduct of the war. But since no one appeared to have weight that was adequate or authority that was competent for such leadership, it yearned for Pericles and summoned him back to the Bema and the war office. He was lying dejectedly at home because of his sorrow, but was persuaded by Alcibiades that his other friends to resume his public life. When the people had apologized for their thankless treatment of him, and he had undertaken again the conduct of state and has been elected general, he asked for a suspension of the law concerning children born out of wedlock. a law which himself had formally introduced, in order that the name and the lineage of his house might not altogether expire through a lack of succession.
Yeah, that's what we talked about, that his two other sons from his wife died, and he didn't want to, you know, he want to make sure that his son becomes a citizen. Okay, let's go. Any, yeah,
Finish it up, my friend.
okay. At this time, it would seem the plague laid hold of Pericles, not with a violent attack, as in the case of others, nor acute, but one which, with a kind of sluggish distemper that prolonged itself through varying changes, used up his body slowly and undermined the loftiness of his spirit. The progress, um, the progress of events wrought in the Athenian a swift appreciation of Pericles and a keen sense of his loss. For those who, while he lived, were oppressed by a sense of his power and felt that it kept them in obscurity, straightway on his removal made trial of other orators and popular leaders, only to be led to the confession that the character more moderate than his in its solemn dignity and more august in its gentleness had not been created. I think it's wonderfully said. That objectionable power of his, which they had used to call monarchy and tyranny, seemed to them now to have been a saving bulwark of the constitution. So greatly was the state afflicted by the corruption and manifold baseness which he had kept weak and groveling, thereby covering it out of sight and preventing it from becoming incurably powerful. So, I mean, this is obviously uh, uh, we kind of like the last one, the last excerpt, and it's basically saying how people now, when they lost him, realized what kind of spirit he was, and there are all kinds of very flattering um, words here. So now that they realize that you know what they lost, and this is the kind of end of this thing. So I just wanted to say that uh, just like I made some notes that when he transferred the treasury and Athenian navy grew stronger and the rest of the league weaker, he said that he rebuilt what they call Propylaea, which is a part of the Acropolis, Parthenon, golden statue of Athena, sculpted by Pericles' friend Phidias, was a famous sculptor at the time. And just to one general, just before the beginning of the Peloponnesian War in 431, the population of Athens was around 250 to 300,000 people. But obviously only adult males over 20 years old could vote. So the total number of those were between 30 and 50,000. Just a little statistics. And that's before the beginning of the Peloponnesian War. Almost.
there-
I guess there were two questions here. Was the war inevitable, as Thucydides thought? And the second question is, did Pericles' death, was that a very bad thing for Athens? As Paul suggested earlier, the more rope-a-dope strategy, if I can call it that Pericles recommended, was the right way to proceed. And I tend to think it was inevitable. It's in every political column, and very frequently in political columns these days, that US and China, well, it's like Athens and Sparta. You have Athens, the number one power with an empire. You have Sparta with a keen sense of inferiority. It's rising, but it's worried about the future. similar to World War I with Germany and the UK. And so Thucydides definitely thought the war was inevitable, that it was difficult to avoid it. But the second question I don't know about would if Pericles had survived, would it have made any difference? I really don't know.
In terms
I
of the
guess
first
no.
question, you could point out that the Greeks were always fighting with each other. So the odds of them, it would have been unusual if they had, for some reason, stopped. So I think it was definitely inevitable given.
Yeah, they were, it's quite amazing. They were the seminal civilization in the West, but they were a vicious bunch of people. I remember reading John Keegan, is that the military historian, and he wrote a book on the Western way of war, and he claimed, and I don't entirely believe it, is that in Asia, and I mean West Asia, war was sort of a game. It wasn't to the death. There's forces would charge each other, but they would break off early. But the Greeks, with this phalanx notion, they fought to the death. I mean, it was total war, and Keegan claimed they invented it. That notion. And I find it hard to believe because the Assyrians were no walk in the park either, and they were definitely Asian, but
Yeah.
there was something about the culture that was extremely violent
Right.
and individualistic. I mean, it was just.
And the democracy was extremely arbitrary and made decisions and would contradict it and send somebody out to countermand the decision 2 days later, and it wouldn't get there in time, and it would result in thousands of deaths.
Well, and I think there's sort of a cultural philosophy that was sort of developed, and not to say that people all over the world for maybe tens of thousands of years haven't had a sense of what they call honor and loyalty and trust and so on, but there seemed to be some type of almost intellectual attempt to create an intellectual foundation around that. And I think you blend that with let's just say a structure of conflict, right? Whether it's with phalanx or the development of much larger forces under much more sophisticated commands, and you almost kind of create a funnel of behavior that makes it very hard to de-escalate even within conflicts. And you've seen this in the modern world, right? I mean, it's not something new, right? You've seen it in the last 500 years.
Yeah, and the Athenians were very expansionist.
Yeah, exactly. And I think so maybe where Keenan, probably somewhat right, and I like him. I mean, he was a big time guy. I mean, as a historian, pretty phenomenal. Is that you had smaller states, and we know this is true from from studying smaller indigenous American, not just U.S. American, but like forces of the Americas, is that if you have a smaller force, you're going to be much more careful when you engage, because you have a much higher risk of destroying whatever your society is, if that's your only protective blanket. If you've only got a force of a few hundred or a few thousand, you're not likely to charge into sort of a World War I type to the last man sort of death saga. You might write big stories about that, but you're probably not going to sacrifice that, because you really risk everything you have. And there was a lot of smaller state forces in what we call Asia or the Asia Pacific, because there were so many smaller groupings, because a lot of it had to do with the topography.
Let's get back to this period. I just wanted to say that after the Persian Wars, there were two hegemons basically emerged, right? The Sparta and Athens. And when Athens created this Delian League, it was the Spartans responded with the Peloponnesian League, but the Delian League started to expand, and it is very. I agree with what John said, that it was inevitable that Spartans couldn't tolerate this expansion because they felt that they're falling behind. So, I mean, they actually did have a first Peloponnesian War in the midst of 5th century. I mean, it was not as profound, and they made supposedly a 30-year peace, which lasted only around 10. But yeah, it was pretty clearly that Sparta was ready to challenge Athens and its supremacy. So it had to be like this. I actually, before we digress into something else, I just wanted to ask everyone, because we have all the regular people here, what do you think of this format? Because this is like the first time, it's like kind of like an experiment. Did you like this format? How do you feel about it?
No, Greg, let me stop you. I actually like this format a lot, but I think in the Wednesday meetings, whatever the format that the presenter wants to select, like last time, John selected more of a presentation type, and this time it was a reading type. The problem is that, and it's probably because of me, the script that I posted, so it wasn't easy to read. But at the same time, I don't want to read. If it's more small excerpt, I understand, but like reading huge paragraphs, it's kind of counterproductive, I think. What we need to do is we need to summarize them and then have discussion points like this, that, the other, and then that's the way. Maybe it's going to take longer to prepare, but I think that's
Can I say something? I thought it was an interesting experiment.
Yeah.
Right. It's the first time we tried to do that. And we did have these, like we'd have a short discussion after every paragraph, and then
was the idea.
And that was also kind of, I thought that worked. I enjoyed it, as a change of pace, and I liked it a lot.
And I only wanted for my presentation. I don't mean to impose it on anybody else. But if we do another Plutarch, I mean, if you would like a similar kind of format.
Yeah, we have Plutarch going on now. The other stories which you could present in the same format, and this was great. You definitely exhibited a lot of good knowledge, and people were engaged. But I want everybody to get engaged as well.
Before we jump back, before we jump completely out of the subject, can we stay with Plutarch for a little while, because we do have 10 minutes left of Plutarch.
Of course.
So I just wanted to talk, or to have people talk a little bit about Plutarch himself rather than Pericles. If you read this, Plutarch uses a lot of really interesting sources. So, for example, he quotes the comic poets. What were they making fun of in Pericles? That he had a funny shaped head. He had a squid shaped head.
Right.
And so he'll always, he'll bring in when he's giving you a depiction of an individual, he uses those other things to add color to it. That seem, like he's making a real effort to tell you the whole story.
Paul, you had said at the very outset that you thought Plutarch would characterize himself more as a moralist than a historian.
Yes.
So what in what we just read would tend towards that assessment?
Well, first, in his preamble, he basically announces that as his intention.
He also had a Moralia. That's another big piece. Essays and the whole. Another work besides Parallel Life, the other one famous one called Moralia, where he talks about this. But he also compares, like for instance, the Pericles and Fabius Maximus on the base of their character. I mean, that also has something to do with that.
Yeah, it's
what
something we
want. The moral is to be drawn from the Pericles story.
What moral to be drawn?
What was the message of the Pericles story? Assuming that he wasn't just telling it like a modern historian, recounting the facts.
I would think.
What was sort of the point of his narrative?
I think he's talking about a personality that can do something that is unpopular and stick to it and, you know, manage to accomplish it and then have people be grateful for it afterward. That, I think that's the thing that he's putting forward for emulation.
Yep. And I think that's the first excerpt. If we could go back there, is speaks to that, I think.
Yeah, can I just say so, Greg? Awesome job, by the way. Really great presentation. As far I know, Plutarch is also influential in the Roman side. Would you say that he's up there with like Tacitus and Herodotus when we're talking about that period of Rome? Or is it mostly
not
just
Tacitus and Suetonius, you probably mean, right?
Oh yeah, yes, yeah, that's what I meant. That's what I
Yeah,
meant.
absolutely. He was as influential as they are. He was a celebrity. He maybe even was more influential because he was a celebrity. I don't think Tacitus
During his time, while he was alive.
Yes,
yes,
yes.
while he was alive.
I mean, he was granted honorary Roman citizenship, and I think he even had some. I think he was given some Roman office during his life. You know, he went to, as a young man, he went to Athens, and all the Romans would send their young children, their adolescent boys to Athens, and you would network. And that's how Plutarch got hooked in at an early age in the upper elites of Roman society. And that's where he stayed for his whole career, his whole life.
Yeah, historians count number of manuscripts that were copied, and Plutarch is one of the highest number, has one of the highest numbers of parallel lives, is one of the most copied manuscripts from antiquity. So that they didn't have bestseller lists. That's how we know. So but, it's interesting. We didn't focus much on the Greek Roman cultural melding, but that's how you wonder how Plutarch really felt about Rome.
Oh, I can tell you.
Deep down.
I can tell you. I had a reading assignment, which was one of Plutarch's lesser known works, which was advice to his nephew who wants to go into politics, right? And Plutarch is, you know, just going on and on and on about, you know, the great Greeks, and you can, but he's basically at a certain point says, son, watch out at a certain point, because we have this master looking down at us, who has to whom we are puppets, and he has a velvet hand, but will, you know, I can't remember, but, you know, in poetic description said that they would get decapitated if they went out of line. Yeah, it was really kind of unusual. And it was like, it was as if he expected people, you know, to get bored before they got to the point that would actually be controversial.
By the way, I just wanted to say, Paul and Greg, I really got a lot out of this, this session. So thank you very much.
Yeah, Greg, I appreciate it. This was a lot of work put in on your own notes as well, and you know, giving us the, so to speak, you know, the perception of the time of the times that people lived in it, and you know, in Pericles times, and we all know Plutarch lived so many years after, and we got to live a little bit of that time. So that was awesome.
Wanted to thank you. Just wanted to add that you know, Alcibiades, which is like you know, very well known general during the war, was actually Pericles' second nephew. So so they were related. And his life is also very fascinating, that I think is worth considering, that we're going to go into Peloponnesian War soon. It would be considered, I would be interested to look into that. But it's very interesting, they were from the same party, and he was his nephew. His father was Pericles' cousin, first cousin.
All right. If you guys allow me, I just want to talk about a little bit of future stuff that we have. So this week we have Battle of Kosovo, and that was you know, a treat from Vlad. Talk about, you know, Murad and, you know, and Serbian, so to speak,
resistance.
resistance. Then for next week, let me see Wednesday, what we have Wednesday. We have we have Phoenicians by Rolf. We switched Nagorno-Karabakh to the following week.
That's
I will have
next Wednesday, right?
that's next Wednesday, and what I'm
You
going to do
didn't
is
publish it yet, no?
I will publish it right now. I apologize for that. It was just from this Saturday. Sorry, I didn't publish that. So it's a continuation on, and it's probably we expect like what Ralph, maybe like an hour extra, right? And then we can open up for questions and as much as we can. Probably going to be a smaller group since I published it late. I apologize.
Sure.
And then on the 31st we have Aaron and Sergio, Spartan Lives and Warfare of Agogi Military. So they've been preparing hard. That's
and
awesome.
the women of Sparta.
And women of Sparta. Yep.
Women, yeah.
Oh, by the way, Zach, for next Wednesday, I had it down in my calendar as 6 p.m. or is it 7 p.m.?
7 p.m. We always start at 7.
7 p.m. Okay, good. Thanks.
And I will post it just now. Also, I have posted the recordings from our Russian battle, for Stalingrad, and also Phoenician battle. So if you guys want to look at that as well, and just to reiterate, like I said, the Karabakh was moved 1 week, but don't forget on 11/1 we have the English Revolution, and I just spoke to Michael, so you might want to brush up on what is it called? My God,
Oliver Cromwell.
Oliver Cromwell, but most importantly, Magna Carta, which I remember Rolf did something on it, and so
Magna Carta is 1215.
Yeah,
medieval.
No, it's a beginning of it says beginning of with Magna Carta. Oh, he's going to give a background. Beginning with Magna Carta, leading up.
That's King John. That was King John.
It's like
beginning of Magna Carta and to leading up to 1640 revolution. So it's gonna be a long one. So that's what he said. At 3 o'clock, by the way, on 11/1. It won't be at 4 o'clock. And he just said
very interesting. Very
what day is 11/1, Zach? Is that a Sunday?
That's a Sunday, 3 o'clock, yes. And also on the different subject. So in a month's time, we're doing the Jewish Wars by Josephus Flavius.
Oh yeah,
I'm going to be the one doing that. We'll see. I mean, maybe we'll keep the same format, or we'll do a combination of both. We'll read some stuff, but he's extremely not. I mean, it's not that easy to read, and sometimes you just need to dive into stuff, and it's just one of those things, I guess. That's it. And then, on this subject, the month after we have Xenophon, that's going to be Paul, and then Homer, also Paul, a month after that. So just to keep it on the same, format.
Homer?
Sorry, Zach. What you have?
We're talking about
Odyssey. Yeah, Odyssey.
Ancient text. Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm sorry. What did you say, Sergio?
Sorry, Zach. While you have the schedule out, when is Teutonic Nights? Is that the 5th? That's what I have down.
8th.
At 4 o'clock?
8, 4 o'clock, 8.
Oh, well, November 8th at 4 o'clock?
That's right.
8. Okay.
Yeah. We fully expect the armor and the
I don't know about that. I'll do something, guys.
then I'm getting an armor. Then I'll dress up. How about that?
No, I can help you with that. Totally help you with that.
So look at that. We managed to make it in 2 hours. Like, very nice.
Yeah, because it was awesome because it was a lot of discussions and it was great. You have a lot of subject matter. Sometimes it's also good that a lot of subject matter and you can keep the discussion.
And you also kept it going at the important moments. You stepped in.
Yep. And like I said, keep dropping ideas on ancient texts. Homer would be the last of the ideas, but keep them coming.
Alcibiades would be my suggestion.
Yeah,
No.
he's about the most exciting character that
Yeah.
you'll ever see in the ancient world.
Alcibiades.
What text would we read, though?
Plutarch.
Yeah. Do we have?
That's true, yes.
Yeah, Plutarch has Alcibiades. I believe.
So I'll put you in for February, Alcibiades, Mr.
February.
Greg.
Wow.
Huh?
Okay. Okay. All right. But we'll pass the war by that time. Okay. All right. We'll revisit it.
No, listen. Today we did Pericles. We didn't even do Pericles yet. You know, so we're gonna come to Pericles. You know, and then me and you also have after
Right.
political.
The Delian League. We'll talk in details about Delian League.
Correct.
And all
Correct.
that period.
And people have already a little bit of knowledge of it. So, like I said, but I'm still looking for you know, if anybody wants to do any other presentations, I'm gladly giving my give my spot. You know, if anyone wants to step in and do a Delian League together with Greg, I'll gladly you know, I have other things also. If anyone wants to step in for that, because I have other presentations as well. So let me know. And at some point, maybe one of the off nights, I want to do the.
I could also give my spot if anyone wants to do Delian League. I mean, I'll be willing to just help out.
Yeah, that's actually on 11/14. So it's a little bit. I think it's too late right now to give people because people need.
Okay.
You know,
All right.
people a little bit, at least a month and a half to prepare. I know that Sergio and Aaron has been preparing for a while, so, and that's why.
Okay.
All right, my friends, have a nice evening. It's 9:03. Enjoy it and see you Sunday.
Good night.
4 o'clock. 4
Good
o'clock.
night, everybody.
Please,
All right, good night, guys. Take care.
All right.
Yeah, I'm
thank
here.
you
Hold
all
on.
for
Sergio,
participation.
what Aaron, what's up?
yeah, I'll wait till everyone leaves. That's okay. I just want to make sure
Okay.
you're there. You're there. You stay
Oh.
there.
You need Sergio or just
No, I just need to ask you a question about Nagorno-Karabakh, just like the date. I just want to actually confirm the actual date.
Yeah, I apologize. You know,
You're apologizing so much. Don't worry. Don't worry.
yeah, Nagorno-Karabakh got pushed to, and I have to speak to my man Rich. It got
Yeah,
pushed
I'll tell him right now. I'll text him.
11/11.
11/11. Perfect.
Yeah,
I'll
it's
send him a
7
text
o'clock.
right
So you guys got pushed a week, which probably gives you a little bit more time to prepare. I was hoping to give you more time to prepare, you know, it's such an interesting subject matter, and you know, and I want to have a political one too. I definitely want to have as a political, and at some point I'm going to start doing the, you know, history of currency, history of, you know, whatever you know suits you, you know.
Yep. No, I mean, I'll do that all day. I like that stuff. So, and sorry I didn't attend this weekend. I just had a bunch of work. We're doing like
No problem.
planning into next year and stuff. So
They all posted online. So,
Yeah.
and this one is going to be posted. So you can always, you know, listen in. You know, sometimes I just don't send them, but they're all on the channel. So you can just go on the channel.
Yep.
And,
No, absolutely.
and you can see you on Stalingrad and all that stuff.
Yep. And then so it's the 31st that Sergio and I have. That's still okay, right? The 31st.
Yeah, that was okay. Yeah, that, I will not change that because that's our regular. And you also have on the after the creation of Israel, you have nuclear race.
Yep.
USA. That would be, but that's 12/6.
Yeah.
So just, you know, keep that in
And
mind.
we have to figure out the next Pacific one we want to
Yeah,
do.
I put it in already for a 1/3. So
Okay.
right after the New Year's.
Actually, if I don't know, wait, 12/6 is opening. You know what? Can I switch that because I can do Pearl Harbor, which is 12/7, and that would be sort of interesting to have it right there.
Okay, I'll switch it with 12/6.
Because then that's like I'm finally kind of up to Pearl Harbor, like I'm right there. So even though I've been saying that for
I'll
3
switch
months.
that. I mean, they're your presentations, so you can switch them however you want to.
Yeah.
I'll just I didn't even post them, so I'll start posting them, you know, following week. I even have one more I didn't post for this month for next Wednesday because we kind of like changing things around, and that's why I wanted to make sure that we post that. Yeah, everything else looks good, man. don't have any. I mean, I'm still waiting to hear about the scholar that she wants to present. I put in tentatively 11:15, but I don't know. Yeah, that's it, man. And have a nice evening, my friends, and I'll talk to you on Sunday. All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Look forward.
Bye.
Thanks so much.
Bye.
Great job, guys.
No problem. Thank you.
See you later, Ralph.
Okay, thanks a lot, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks for this. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, bye.